one of the city of Aswan Governorate. It was known in the ancient texts as Jeba or Deba or Teba, and in Greek as Edfu or Edbu, and later the Arabs added letter A and it became Edfu. It was a capital of the second nome of Upper Egypt. The Greeks equated it with god Apollo and called it Apollopolis Magna. The falcon here was worshipped under the name Hor Behded, so it was a center for the cult of the triad Hor Behded, Hor Sematawi, and goddess Hathor. Edfu city comprises the most complete temple in Egypt, which means that all the factors that you find in any construction concerning a temple built during the ancient times in Egypt, you will find all of them right here in Edfu temple.
Edfu is one of Aswan Governorate cities and the capital of the second nome of Upper Egypt nomes called Wesses Her. It lies on the western bank of the Nile, in the midway between Luxor and Aswan. Being an important city, it was a center for the cult of the triad Hor Behded, who is Horus of Edfu, and his wife Hathor, and their son Hor Sematawi, or Horus, the unifier of the two lands, or Hor Ihi. Edfu got its modern name from the ancient Egyptian word Jeba, which became Deba and Debu and Edbu and Teba in Demotic. Then in Coptic in Upper Egyptian slang, Tebu, but in Lower Egypt slang, Etbu or Tebu or Edfu. Then finally in Arabic, Edfu. The city was known in the Greek texts as Apollonopolis Magna, or the big city of Apollo, differentiating between it and the small city of Apollo, which is Kos, relating both cities to their god Apollo, whom the Greeks equated with the Egyptian god Horus, who was the main god of Edfu. The cause of today's famosity of Edfu city is its famous temple, which is considered the most complete and the most beautiful Egyptian temple, having its constructional elements almost complete, and being engraved with an enormous number of texts and scenes, executed in the most refined and distinguished artistic way. On its walls, the mythology of the struggle between Horus, son of Osiris, and his uncle Set was recorded. The primary origin of this temple goes back to the ancient Egyptian period, as monuments which belong to the second intermediate period and the New Kingdom and the late periods were found. The work in the recent temple started in the 10th year of the reign of King Ptolemy III or Euergetes I in 237 BC. It has ended in the 10th year of the rule of King Ptolemy IV in 212 BC. Later on, Ptolemy VII and the 12th and the Roman Emperor Augustus added to it, ending the work in 57 BC. By that, the operation of building and executing the scenes and texts would have taken 180 years. Edfu Temple was the subject of the study of many scientists throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. They have recorded the scenes and the relief texts in different periods. Amongst them are de Rouget and Émile Chassinon, who worked in this temple for 40 years, after which they produced 14 parts of a book about Edfu Temple and its reliefs. In addition, Chassinon produced 2 books called The Feast of Osiris in Kehek months, according to the texts and scenes of Edfu Temple. Elio wrote a book in 2 parts about the cult of Horus in Edfu Temple. Sylvie Couville also wrote about the cult of Horus. Finally, Dieter Kurz, the professor of archaeology in Hamburg University in Germany, restudied the scenes and texts in Edfu. He had his master about the decorations of Edfu's columns. He has also made a study about the scenes of lifting up the sky in Edfu temple, and another study about the meeting point of gods in Edfu. The last author was Kort, who wrote a quick book about Edfu. The temple is composed of the traditional elements that are found in Egyptian temples of the Ptolemaic period. It starts with a pylon, followed by an open court that's decorated with columns on 3 of its sides. This court is followed by a colonnade, which ceiling rests on 12 columns, and its entrance is decorated with 2 large statues of black granite representing god Hor-Bahdeti or Horus of Edfu in his falcon form. This hall is followed by another hall with 12 columns holding its ceiling. It has 2 rooms, one on each side of the entrance. One was used as a library to keep the manuscripts, and the other was for keeping the tools and jars used in the religious rituals. Following the hall are 2 vestibules. The first was called the food hall, as it was consecrated for presenting offerings, and the second is called the God's Rest. The temple ends with the sanctuary with its granite naos. The entrance of Edfu temple lies in the southern side, which means that the access of the temple from the door to the sanctuary is north-south. On the left side of the temple, in the outer part, which is in the eastern side, lie the storages and the birth chapel or the mamizi. Ahead of the temple is a great pylon with 2 towers. In each of them are 2 flagpoles openings. In front of the pylons are 2 statues of black granite, representing god Hor-Bahdet in his falcon form. They are similar to the other 2 statues which lie ahead of the colonnade behind the pylons. On the 2 sides of the pylon, at the east and the west, there are 4 lines of offerings. In one of the lines of the right pylon, the king presents offerings to the fields. It's called Sechet. The temple was surrounded with walls, with decorating friezes, amongst which is that frieze that represents the Egyptian nature, in the form of people, topped by symbols of the hills which present their offerings. One of these offerings is the green kohl, and the second is the offering of the black kohl. On the right side of the outer wall of the temple, there are the people of the nomes in the form of god Habi, preceded by the king. As for the left outer wall of the temple, the king stands, and behind him is his wife, then a person representing the nome of Memphis or Eneb Hedj, giving his offering. In front of all this group stands the triad of the temple, god Hor-Bahdeti and his wife goddess Hathor and their son god Hor-Sematawi. Behind the pylon are 6 screen walls. Each of them represents a whole complete scene, topped by the winged sun for protection. The king presents one of his offerings to a god. Then he presents the perfume offering to goddess Hathor in the form of the Sphinx, with a pot ahead of it called El Antio. Below that is a decorational frame with the Neb sign, and the Rekhid bird raising its hands, and the star Duat, which means worship. This whole design means all the people are praying. The main gates of Edfu temple are composed of two giant pylons facing the north. In ancient times, they were closed with a big door made of cedar wood and coated with gold and bronze. Behind the pylon is a grand open court with two rows of columns on two sides. Here, there are 32 Greek-Roman columns with beautifully decorated capitals composed of flowers' leaves and palm reeds. The columns bear reliefs of a king whose name was never carved, showing him presenting offerings to the dead. The cartouches all around in many parts in the temple were left empty for a reason. In the 180 years of building and relieving Edfu temple, many Greek kings succeeded one another to the throne of Egypt, some of which ended the life of the ruling king to inherit his throne, and that was very common amongst the Greek kings, who all came from one family. Not knowing who was coming next to the throne and when, the Egyptian builders preferred to leave the cartouche or the royal slogan of the name empty. The giant screen walls behind the row of columns behind the pylon are divided into 3 sections of scenes executed in high reliefs. They show the king practicing the formal rituals and duties which he ought to perform each time he visits the temple. The king exits his palace wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt on the right side of the entrance and the red Lower Egypt crown on the left side. In front of him walks a priest burning incense. Then the king is purified with the sacred water by god Thoth and god Horus of Edfu. He receives the scepter from Horus, witnessed by Atum and Sekhmet and Ma'at. The Ankh symbol of life is placed over his nose in the presence of Horus, the god of Edfu. Finally, he stands in front of Horus of Edfu and Hathor of Dendera. Beneath these scenes is a series of shows of the journey of festivals which Hathor, the goddess of Dendera, made in the river to encounter her husband Horus in Edfu. And exterior walls of Edfu temple are full of tens of scenes and texts which are of religious and historical importance. Amongst them are the scenes which represent the festival of the sacred marriage between Hathor, the goddess of Dendera, and her husband Hur Bahdeti, the god of Edfu. The ancient Egyptians organized an annual visit done by Hathor of Dendera in a pilgrimage to her husband Hur Bahdeti, the god of Edfu, where marriage was consummated between them, as he took her as a wife after the social revolution and before the Middle Kingdom period. This visit became an official festival since Thutmose III's reign. They called it the Kind Meeting. This festival was celebrated twice a year, once in Dendera and the other time in Edfu. Her trip going to Edfu was pictured on the northern wall, and on the left wall we find her trip back to Dendera. In that grand festival, the sacred bark of Hathor was placed over an altar in a big sailing boat. The priests of Edfu went out carrying the golden statue of their god Hor to meet their fellow priests of Dendera goddess, coming with a statue of Hathor on the sailing boats. Once this gathering settles in Edfu, they stay for days, celebrating this meeting, presenting offerings and singing and non-stop chanting and playing music. The high officials contributed in the festival of the temple and performed its rituals and presented food and drinks and gifts to the attendants and visitors. Once the pilgrimage rituals are done in 13 days, the priests of Dandara took her golden statue back to her temple in Dandara where it belongs. The special scenes here show how the Egyptian men danced by kneeling down and going backwards while raising one arm high and resting the other on their chest, taking turns with the other arm with each movement backwards. They performed that dance in front of the procession of the king, who came forward, lifted up by the spirits of Nechen and Boto, to lead the great festival. The colonnade of Edfu temple is preceded by two black granite statues of god Hur Behdet or Horus of Edfu to decorate its entrance. The hall itself is adorned with 12 columns, organized in 2 rows, each with 3 columns. One needs to imagine how the hall looked like originally, when it was totally colored. The capitals vary from one another, each showing a different collection of floral designs. On each side of the entrance there is a chamber. One was used for storing the golden vases used for purifying the king when he performed his duties as a high priest in the festival of Horus and Hathor. The other chamber was the library of the great temple, where rolls of papyrus used in rituals were kept.
Here in Edfu temple, there are special scenes that describe the foundation and the building of the temple, starting from step number 1 and all the way till the end. So we start here with the king, who left early in the early morning his palace and arrived to the temple with goddess Seshat, the goddess of writing. She is going to help him to determine the area of the temple, and so after measuring it, they are going to put 4 wedges in the 4 corners of the temple after measuring the right angle. This ritual is called Pedesh Sesh, and after that he's going to go to these 4 angles and make holes in them, make holes in the 4 corners, and then put foundation deposits, small amulets which will bring good luck to the temple and drive away the bad spirits. After that, he's going to come in a different day and he's going to throw balls of natron salt to purify the ground of the temple before building it. And this ritual will be repeated later when the temple is totally built. He's going to purify all the temple by again throwing balls of natron salt all around the ground of the temple. This is actually part of the rituals. The rituals of building the temple of Edfu are continued on that section of the first hall, on that part of the wall, where we see the king arriving to the location of the temple and purifying it by covering all the walls of the temple with white plaster. White plaster is an element or material used to purify anything. Then we come here as a final step. We can see that the temple was totally built and is totally painted, as painting comes as last process in finishing up a building. So the temple is painted, and now he's going to pass around it with balls of natron salt again to purify it. This salt comes from a valley in Egypt called Natron Valley. That's why the salt is called natron salt. So these were some of the scenes that describe the rituals of building a temple in ancient Egypt.